Hi, this is my story of when I made my decision to be a disciple of Jesus. Now, in story number 21, I told you the story of how life seemed to be turning out more bitter than sweet for me, including in the love stakes. And in story number 22, I told you how I fell out with my mates at school.
Chicken!
There were some things that stayed constant, however. Being a part of Ruama meant that every Sunday we all attended Sunday school and church. And often on Saturday nights, the church youth group organised events that I would get invited to. I had to admit that the young guy that taught me at Sunday school and some of those young people that were leaders in the youth group really impressed me. Though individually they may not have met all the criteria of what I thought would bring me happiness, being good looking, being successful, being funny, though some of them were pretty funny, I noticed that they seemed to have a constant joy. Oh, they had problems. They would often talk about them, but their problems did not seem to faze them like mine did. Though they were all different, they seemed to have one thing in common. They talked about Jesus as if they really knew him, as if he was the person that could help them through everything. Then, of course, there was my family. My parents would often talk about their faith to me. I, of course, knew some of the many struggles that they had, yet again, those struggles didn't faze them. They had complete confidence that Jesus was with them. I'd been brought up to believe in God, and it had given me, I thought, a pretty good knowledge of the Bible. But as a teenage boy, there was one big sticking point in that book. I knew that according to Jesus, following him was not a private affair, or even something that could be part-time, something that just happened on Sundays or Saturday nights. No, following him meant that everything had to be given to him, including my ambitions, my reputation, pretty much everything. And I wasn't sure that that was really, something that I was prepared to do. And following Jesus didn't seem to me to be the way to become liked, to become popular, to be successful. So I was still sticking to my plan. Yeah, I know that it hadn't quite worked out to date, but hey, I intended to learn by my mistakes, not hang around idiots, be more disciplined with my studies, and exercise, learn to be cool and funny. Falling out with my friends had given me more time to study, and I did well in my school certificate, so I decided to stay on at school with a dream of going to university. And the Christmas holidays, well, they were looking good too. We were going to Swan Lake at Myra for a 3-week water skiing holiday with Uncle Jack and his family. Sherelle was coming, and Ian wasn't, yes. Just before Christmas 1972, I was out helping my mum with the shopping. Mum loved to read, so we made a detour to her favourite Bible bookshop. "You should get a book to read for the holiday. You won't be able to ski all day," she said to me as we entered the shop. "I can't read these books, Mum. They're all R-rated." "No, they're not." "Yeah, R for religious." Anyway, I promised to look, and one paperback caught my eye. It had a picture of a man with a knife to his throat. It looked exciting. "I'll have this one, Mum." The holiday was great. It was always fun with Uncle Jack. We skied all morning, we'd swim after lunch, and then in the afternoon I would read my book. At night I would often sit with Sherelle on an old tree that leant over the water. I had to put up with her telling me about how wonderful Ian, but we talked about other things. Often she would tell me about her faith in Jesus. The book I was reading was called Run, Baby, Run. As it turned out, it was about a guy that, unlike me, wouldn't have thought twice about going to Roselands to pinch some jeans. The story was of a guy called Nicky Cruz, a leader of the Brooklyn, Puerto Rican youth street gang called the Mau Mau's in America in the 1950s. He talked about the gang warfare that they called rumbles, and his constant desire to be accepted, loved, and respected. Despite the fact that he was so different to me, coming from a dysfunctional home, involved in a life of crime, I identified with him because the thing that drove him was a desire to be liked, respected, and loved by his mates. Into this story comes a preacher who is everything that Nicky does not admire. He is skinny, not tough. He's not stylish, but dressed in a country bumpkin suit. But unlike Nicky and unlike me, he was fearless. He was happy to be a follower of Jesus.
God loves you, Nicky. You come near me, I'll kill you.
The preacher, called Jim Wilkinson, tells Nicky that the person that loves him more than anyone is Jesus, and Jesus wants him to follow him. Nicky decides to follow Jesus, and as expected, his mates in the gang abandon him. But Nicky doesn't care. Jesus' love, not the love of his mates, was the answer. Jesus was able to fill that dark, lonely place in his heart. One night on my camp stretcher, half in my sleeping bag, looking at the canvas ceiling of my tent, I prayed to God and said that I too was prepared to follow him, no matter what. Now, I didn't hear any angels singing, no beam of light streamed down from heaven. I had no emotional response. I simply drifted off to sleep, wondering how I would ever be brave enough to fulfill the commitment that I'd just made to Jesus. Now, that was 48 years ago, and what I was to discover, just like Nicky in the book did, like my parents said they had, like the leaders in the youth group talked about, that Jesus satisfied my longing to be loved, and that Jesus would give me everything I needed to be his disciple. But at that stage, lying on my stretcher in my tent, I just didn't know how I'd go when I went back to school. Being a Christian was easy with my family. It was easy at church. But how would I go with my schoolmates? Let me tell you that in story number 24. See ya.